Till the 1960s was the heyday for the quicksand trope. Almost 3% of films showed characters sinking in clay, mud, or sand. Princess Bride and Never-Ending Story had me worried back in the day. My mother used to go apeshit when I was little when I came back from playing with my friends over at the abandoned brickwork with my shoes covered in quicksand clay. I lost a few shoes that way and had to dig them out. Good times. Everyone ready for the 500 completely original comments about how when I was a kid, I thought that quicksand was going to be much more common. Only 3% seems low. Does this include poorly dubbed Italian sand and sandal epics? I legit grew up in the 70s thinking this is how I would die. I was seriously stressed about it. That and going back to the Old West and getting shot. Not sure how I'd end up in the Old West, but the fear was real. In the 80s I was sure killer bees would end us all. Also nuclear bombs in the 80s, but then Sting wrote that song and we all felt better. And in the 80s every show had a clip episode that was driven by one of the characters hitting their head and getting amnesia. When I hear about quicksand, now I only think of Bert Kreischer and his interest in the quicksand porn genre. Apparently they're known as sinkers. I tried to make quicksand as a kid. Dug a large hole, filled it with water and sand, then the displaced dirt, nothing. John Mulaney was a victim of this fraudulent conspiracy. I took the time to fast forward past the jarring intro. Enjoy. https://youtube b/4eyyyicq0hle t equals 29 https://youtube b/4eyyyicq0hle t equals 29. Great NPR Radiolab episode on quicksand and films https://www. Unix Studios. org/podcast/radiolab/article/quicksand. Thanks/you/Hithertown Foretold for my first Bravo Award. Made my day, night. Watched Twin Peaks earlier this year and realized that I hadn't seen the hair turning white trope in a long time. It was such a trope in older TV shows and movies, but it's just never used these days. Hey Charlie, what is it that isn't exactly earth and isn't exactly sand? In the 1990s it's probably men getting hit in the nuts. In children's comedy it's probably 80%. Damn, had to check, Blazing Saddles is the 70s. All Gilligan's Island, really? Let's turn this around, then. What's the most recent film to feature quicksand? Atreyu didn't have to lose his horse. Nobody has mentioned the new fad of quicksand porn, so I'm putting it down. When I was about 7, I was 100% convinced that quicksand/mud was just a TV trope. Well, I was walking in a run-off creek one day with a friend and suddenly her feet disappeared. Her rain boots got entirely sucked into the mud and I had to pull her out without her boots. We fished her shoes out afterward, but that's when I learned that quicksand/mud does in fact exist. We did worry about it a lot. Here's an interesting fact, my friend fell into quicksand in front of his house Halloween night. I was scared of quicksand for quite a long while after an episode of The Wild Wild West featured the villain slowly being sucked down. Came across some as a kid, which confirmed every TV and movie trope I ever saw. Remained afraid of it for all of 30 seconds, until I realized how easy it was to get out minus my shoes. I haven't experienced quicksand, but I've experienced something that's similar, I think. I was walking through a field next to a lake when I was younger and the floor was completely saturated with water, and before I knew it the entire floor was shaking up and down and felt very unstable. I'm not really sure if I was in any danger, but it was very frightening at the time. There's a pretty cool modern short film about a quicksand-like thing called Fave that you can watch here, https://vimeo.com/293033666/. Got an Oscar nom, for what it's worth, for Best Live Action Short Film. Shrooms. I feel like piranhas also fall into the category of stuff we thought would probably kill us someday. But only one movie was brave enough to depict lightning sand, and it didn't come out until the 80s. I'm looking at you, Rise of Skywalker. Yep, they milked that almost as much as they did the gunslinger showdown in the middle of the street, which never actually happened. It was a complete Hollywood creation. As a child, I was terrified of quicksand. I thought it could be anywhere. So I was always scared that I would fall in and be swallowed by the earth. Turns out I should have been terrified of student loans. Those things will really swallow you whole. Deleted. Milk's I Have a Dream speech mentions quicksands of racial injustice. You literally cannot drown in quicksand. It makes everything in it far too buoyant. You're much more likely to dehydrate or starve if you got stuck in it and no one found you for several days, but if fall into quicksand in a movie, you're dead within 2 minutes for some reason. Gilligan's Island had a stupid number of quicksand traps. I was just thinking the other day how little we see of quicksand these days. Bartgay. I was born in '94 and still grew up thinking quicksand was gonna be an issue. Quicksand was very real for me as a kid. See, I've grown up with a small lake behind me. When it was being filled up it would wash fine sand along with the water, and as the water was rising over the next few days the surrounding sand in the pond would be quicksand. Quicksand looks like regular sand on top, but once you step on you sink fast. It could easily swallow a child. And I've stepped in recently and sunk to the waist. I'm 6'2". It can be very tough to get out of and has sucked shoes off of my feet multiple times. As a kid, I was convinced I would encounter quicksand and need to lasso some rope onto something to pull myself out. I once stepped in quicksand in the remotest parts of Suistern, Utah. It was pretty cool. It was actually just like the movies, except it was next to the edge of a stream, so you could easily crawl out. But yeah, you just kept sinking and like a suction, it was dangerously impossible to pull your boots out. This was before the internet, where everyone calls it lazy writing as soon as they're able to identify a trope. For you convenience, http://www. slate.com/articles/health_science/2010/08/terra_infirma. HTML. That's the Slate article that the current Wikipedia entry on the subject cites to support the 3% figure. I heard somewhere that there is a very popular fetish out there right now of people getting stuck in mud and quicksand. I got stuck in quicksand about 5 years ago. It went up to mid-thigh on me. I was wearing my GoPro, so if you want to see what it's like, watch this. https://youtube. b/uocdvl5pkbs, t equals 391, 641. I grew up in the 70s and 80s and always felt I was going to die in quicksand, as never had a trusty horse to rescue me. Still never heard it mentioned or seen it with my own eyes. I remember my parents telling me how to avoid quicksand and what to do if I was ever stuck in some. At the time I thought I would for sure need that info later in life. I always thought quicksand was gonna be a much bigger problem than it turned out to be. https://youtube, b/4eyyyicq0hle, t equals 72. I legitimately thought quicksand was going to be something I'd need to be prepared for in my life from all the crazy television shows depicting that very scenario. Turns out it's sociopathic assholes I should have been prepared for. Damn you, television programming. I was probably 8 or 9 watching a Gilligan Island rerun. They found Gilligan's Dixie cup hat resting on quicksand. My heart dropped. I was devastated. Thankfully it was all a misunderstanding. I was very afraid of quicksand as a youngster in the late 60s/70s. And in the 70s, it was rattlesnakes. That's one thing I remember from TV shows growing up. Quicksand and rattlesnakes was just as prevalent in the 1970s. I was a kid then and was convinced it was a widespread problem that could mean a terrifying death to the unwary. Lawrence of Arabia. Best film ever, except for the quicksand scene. https://youtube, b/qwnvhnt3fq, t equals 119. r/unexpected Mulani. Growing up in the 80s in the UK, there were a lot of old films on TV during the day. I honestly thought I'd be finding myself in Quicksand a lot more often.